On the night of January 24, 2026, Kyiv experienced one of the most intense and overwhelming aerial assaults of the entire conflict. As midnight approached, the Ukrainian capital was calm on the surface, but beneath that silence, radar screens across the region began to light up simultaneously. Within minutes, air raid sirens echoed across the city, warning millions that something far larger than a routine strike was unfolding. This was not a limited operation, nor a symbolic attack. This was a massive, coordinated air offensive involving nearly 400 strike assets, carefully timed, layered, and executed with strategic intent. According to Ukrainian data, Russia launched a total of 396 aerial attack assets in a single night, making it one of the largest combined airstrikes of the war. The scale alone sent a clear message. This was a demonstration of sustained firepower, operational depth, and winter warfare doctrine in action. Kyiv was not chosen at random. It was targeted because it represents the political, military, and energy nerve center of Ukraine. By early 2026, the conflict had entered a phase where seasons themselves became strategic tools. Russia understood that winter multiplies the effects of infrastructure strikes. Electricity is no longer just about lights and convenience. It becomes heating, water supply, communication, transportation, and industrial survival. In freezing temperatures, power outages ripple outward, slowing logistics, halting weapons production, and placing immense strain on civilian morale. Kyiv, as the central hub of Ukrainian command and control, was deeply dependent on stable energy infrastructure. Disrupting power grids during midwinter meant disrupting military coordination, rail transport, repair facilities, and decision-making itself. The January 24 strike was designed not merely to destroy targets, but to destabilize systems. It was a calculated attempt to apply pressure through darkness, cold, and uncertainty. The sheer number of weapons used that night illustrates the ambition of the operation. According to Ukrainian statements, Russia employed 396 aerial attack assets in total. Of these, an overwhelming 375 were strike drones, primarily Geran-2 and Herbera type unmanned aerial vehicles. These drones formed the backbone of the opening phase, saturating Ukrainian airspace and forcing air defenses into continuous engagement. Alongside the drones, Russia deployed high-end strategic weapons. 2 3M-22 Zircon hypersonic missiles were reportedly used, introducing a level of speed and unpredictability that few air defense systems can meaningfully counter. 12 Kh-22 heavy cruise missiles were launched from 2 22M3 bombers operating from the airspace of the Bryansk region. These missiles, originally designed as carrier killers, brought immense destructive power against fixed infrastructure targets. Additionally, 6 Iskander-M ballistic missiles were launched from Bryansk, targeting hardened military and energy installations. Completing the strike package was a single Kh-59 precision-guided missile, launched from the Kursk region by a fighter aircraft such as the Su-35, aimed at a specific high-value target. Each component of the strike had a defined role. This was not chaos. It was sequencing. The attack began with drones, as modern Russian strike doctrine often dictates. Hundreds of Geran-2 and Herbera drones crossed into Ukrainian airspace from multiple directions. Their immediate purpose was not simply to hit targets, but to force Ukrainian air defense systems to activate radars, reveal firing positions, and expend interceptor missiles. Throughout the night, Ukrainian defenses were compelled to engage continuously. By the time the drone wave reached its peak, Ukrainian air defenses were already under strain. This was precisely the moment the next phase began. Once air defenses were fully engaged, Russia introduced weapons designed to bypass them almost entirely. The reported use of 3M-22 Zircon hypersonic missiles marked a critical escalation, traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 8 and maneuvering unpredictably at high altitude. Zircon missiles drastically compress reaction time. Detection does not equal interception. In many cases, it only confirms the inevitability of impact. For command centers in Kyiv, the detection of Zircon missiles meant that no meaningful response window existed. As the skies remained saturated and defenses stretched thin, Tu-22 M3 bombers launched 12 Kh-22 cruise missiles from the Bryansk region. These missiles represent a class of weapon rarely used casually. Each Kh-22 weighs nearly 6 tons, travels at supersonic speeds, and descends on its target from extreme altitude in a steep dive. When a Kh-22 reaches its target, the effect is not surgical. It is devastating. Simultaneously, 6 Iskander-M ballistic missiles were launched from the Bryansk region. Unlike cruise missiles, ballistic weapons follow a steep, high-speed trajectory, descending almost vertically at hypersonic velocity. Their flight profile leaves air defenses with extremely limited engagement opportunities. Iskander-M missiles are typically reserved for high-value targets, command centers, hardened facilities, and critical infrastructure nodes. Amid the chaos, one Kh-59 guided missile was launched from Kursk airspace by a fighter aircraft, likely Su-35. The use of a single Kh-59 was deliberate. This missile is chosen when accuracy matters more than spectacle. Its presence suggested a carefully selected target, possibly tied to command, communications, or a specific infrastructure element. The aftermath of the strike revealed the true impact. Kyiv woke to a city partially paralyzed. Entire districts were without electricity and heating in freezing temperatures. Emergency services raced from site to site as damaged substations, power transmission lines, and industrial facilities smoldered. Repair crews struggled to restore power under harsh winter conditions, while residents faced cold homes and disrupted services. From a military standpoint, the damage extended far beyond civilian inconvenience. Energy disruptions affected rail transport, military logistics, and industrial production. Command centers were forced to operate under degraded conditions, while resources were diverted from frontline needs to emergency repairs. Even where air defenses claimed success, the operational consequences remained severe. The strike imposed friction across Ukraine's military and civilian systems simultaneously. Psychologically, the aftermath was just as significant. The realization that Kyiv, one of the most heavily defended cities in the country, could still be overwhelmed sent a powerful message. The winter context amplified fear and fatigue. Darkness and cold became constant reminders of vulnerability. Following the strike, Ukrainian authorities claimed that 372 of the 396 incoming targets were intercepted. According to these claims, 9 Kh-22 missiles, 5 Iskander-M ballistic missiles, 1 Kh-59 missile, and 357 drones were shot down. However, these figures remain unverified. What cannot be denied, however, is the visible aftermath. Fires burned across Kyiv. Energy facilities were damaged. Power outages affected large areas of the city. Interception statistics do not erase physical destruction, particularly when debris from intercepted missiles still falls onto infrastructure. The contrast between claimed interception rates and real-world damage highlighted the limitations of air defense under saturation conditions. As seen repeatedly throughout the conflict, air defense success on paper does not always translate into protection on the ground. The true objective of the January 24th strike was not measured solely in destroyed targets, but in systemic disruption. By striking energy infrastructure during winter, Russia aimed to slow Ukrainian logistics, disrupt weapons manufacturing, strain civilian resilience, and complicate military coordination. Electricity outages and freezing temperatures create cascading effects. Transportation slows, repairs take longer, morale weakens. The battlefield extends far beyond the front line, and into the daily functioning of the state. Until now, that's all for today, and thanks for watching.